Hello everyone and welcome to my B&B Fan Club channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Katie Logan stood motionless in the sterile light of a hospital lab in the sumptuous shadows of Los Angeles' elite circles, where fortunes were built on whispers and wrecked by facts discovered from the past. The Bold and the Beautiful has long been a venue for dramatic revelations, but this one went deeper than any staged treachery. The DNA test results in her shaky palms revealed a startling truth. Will Spencer was not Luna Nozawa's biological father. The man she had loved, battled for, and eventually lost was innocent of the scandal that had ripped through their lives like a hurricane. But innocence provided no relief, only a terrible, painful hole filled with the ghosts of what could have been. Katie's memory flashed back to the day everything began to crumble. It was a crisp autumn morning in the Forrester Creations empire, where fashion and family feuds were linked like threads in a couture gown. Luna, the intriguing young woman with eyes that held mysteries deeper than the Pacific, had arrived, claiming a connection to the Spencer legacy. Bill Spencer, Katie's ex-husband and the driving force behind Spencer Publications, had been accused of a one-night indiscretion years before. The rumors implicated him as the father of Luna's child, igniting a tabloid frenzy and fracturing friendships among the Logan and Spencer families. Katie, the strong guardian of her son Will, was the first to demand proof. "This can't be true," she said in the boardroom, her voice piercing through the whispers of disbelief. Bill, with his customary swagger covering fragility, had sworn his innocence, but the chronology coincided too closely with a hazy memory from a crazy night in Tokyo. Luna's mother, Penelope, told stories of passion and sorrow, tinged with the pain of abandonment. Katie, who had been hurt by Bill's previous infidelity, felt the old wounds return. She had raised Will alone following their divorce, pouring her heart into creating a life free of Bill's turbulent circle. Now this phantom infant threatened to drag them all to oblivion. The shock hit Katie like a tidal wave during the lab's secret reveal. Dr. Ellis, a bespectacled geneticist with a metronome-like voice, slid the envelope across his desk. "The markers don't match, Ms. Logan. Paternity is excluded with 99.9% certainty." Katie's world shifted. Relief should have poured her. Will's legacy protected, Bill vindicated, but instead a hollow melancholy grew. If Bill wasn't the father, who had haunted their family? And why did Luna's oddly familiar eyes arouse basic emotions in Katie's soul? As the days faded into nights, Katie returned to her Malibu mansion, the ocean's roar a hopeless lullaby to her insomnia. She sifted through old photographs, following the contours of features long forgotten. Luna's characteristics, such as high cheekbones and a dimpled smile, reminded Katie of someone from her own youth. Flashes of memory surfaced. A foggy college party from the 1990s, complete with cheap booze and adolescent disobedience. There had been a man, a brief affair before Bill entered her life. Marcus was an ambitious musician with higher goals than his talent. They'd split up over tears and unspoken vows, Katie pursuing stability while he retreated into the fog of failed gigs and broken strings. Could it be? Katie's heart raced as she investigated deeper, hiring a private investigator under the cover of darkness. The information arrived via encrypted email. Marcus Hale died in a car accident a decade ago, but not before fathering a daughter with a woman called Lee Nozawa, Penelope's sister. Luna was not a Spencer child. She was Katie's blood, a half-sister to Will, hidden under layers of subterfuge engineered by Penelope's resentment of the Logans for real and imagined slights. Katie was completely devastated by the revelation. She faced Luna in the dimly lighted gardens of the Forrester home, beneath a canopy of stars that appeared to mock her isolation. "You're my daughter," Katie said, tears streaming down her face. Luna's face collapsed, and denial gave way to weeping. "Mom, Penelope lied to protect me from your world. She said you abandoned us." The word abandoned stabbed Katie like shrapnel. She didn't know, how could she? But remorse gnawed at her like a merciless beast. Will, now a young man pursuing his own destiny at Forrester Creations, discovered the truth next. His reply was a whirlwind of perplexity and sullen rage. "A sister? All this time while I fought to prove my worth." He rushed off, leaving Katie alone to bear the burden of her silent parenthood. Bill, cleared but permanently changed, provided awkward support, their common history proving too fragile to cross. "Katie, we can fix this," he replied, but his eyes showed the distance between them. Katie's life became a sad tapestry over the next few weeks. She made timid overtures to Luna, and they were welcomed with wary acceptance. They enjoyed meals interspersed with awkward silences, stories of missed milestones lingering in the air. Katie learned about Luna's difficulties, foster homes following Marcus's death, Penelope's machinations forming a barrier of hate. "I hated you before I knew you," Luna said one rainy evening, her voice breaking. Katie drew her closer, the embrace a barrier against rivers of regret. However, the sadness grew stronger with isolation. Friends like Brooke Logan expressed sorrow, but it stings. "You're stronger than this," Brooke urged, but Katie felt otherwise. Nights were the worst, haunted by glimpses of a parallel existence, in which she had known Luna since birth and cradled her rather than chasing corporate ladders. Will's distancing deepened, and he poured himself into work to avoid the tangled familial ties. Bill's attempts at reconciliation failed, and his playboy mask cracked under the strain. Katie drove to the cliffs overlooking the sea one fateful night, while thunder rumbled outside her windows. The DNA papers flew in the wind, symbolizing a truth that was both liberating and imprisoning. She yelled into the emptiness, and the sound was swallowed by the thundering waves below. In that moment, the specific pain became clear. Not only the loss of years with Luna, but also the erasure of her own story. Katie had created barriers to protect herself from vulnerability, only to discover her heart's core exposed, bleeding truths she couldn't bear. Redemption flashed weakly. Therapy sessions revealed repressed emotions, pushing Katie to confront the Logan's heritage of secrets. She and Luna bonded by their shared DNA, forming a delicate sisterhood. Will return with timid steps toward acceptance. Bill, humbled, took a step back, creating space for new beginnings. But the scar remained, a tremendous sadness for the family that could have been, shattered not by paternity lies, but by time's merciless indifference. Katie's story was one of quiet resilience. She campaigned for DNA disclosure in family courts, turning suffering into purpose. Luna thrived at Forrester, her designs filled with a desire for salvaged heritage. Katie grieved in private for the daughter she'd never had, for the secrets that had robbed them of their innocence. The bold and the beautiful continued, but for Katie, the true drama was the never-ending anguish of what fate had withheld, a distinct grief carved in the twin helix of blood and regret. It was a calm morning when the world she'd created for herself came crumbling down. Elara sat on the side of the bed, her hands quivering, staring at the small piece of paper in front of her. The DNA results had arrived, inconspicuous in their plain white envelope, but the contents were nothing short of catastrophic. She'd spent months anticipating a future full of warmth and certainty, only to discover that every fantasy was a lie. She'd always trusted him. Merrick had been so charming that it was impossible to doubt him. His laughter filled the home like sunlight spilling through large windows, and his gentle hands comforted her after the long, lonely evenings she had endured before they met. When she discovered she was pregnant, she felt both anxiety and delight, knowing that the life growing inside her would be a monument to their love. However, it seems that love had been a frail illusion. The envelope had been slipped through the mail slot very softly, yet it weighed more than any storm she had ever experienced. She recognized the return address right away, a private laboratory specializing in sensitive cases like hers. For weeks, uncertainties had crept into her thoughts, whispering possibilities she would not dare to express even to herself. Merrick had been aloof recently, leaving home late with explanations that she had accepted without question. He smiled, but it was as if his eyes were elsewhere, concealing a truth that could no longer be hidden. Her fingers shook as she ripped open the envelope, revealing a single sheet of paper. Numbers, letters, and technical jargon blurred in front of her eyes. Then her eyes fell on the words that stopped her heart. Confirmation that Merrick was not the father of her kid. The room felt impossibly small, the walls crowding in and drowning her with the weight of treachery. She had envisaged telling him first, sharing the wonderful moment of discovery with the guy she adored. Instead, she was forced to face a reality that challenged every assumption she had about their existence together. As she reflected on the kid growing inside her, she shed quiet tears. Little Elara, unaffected by the world's misery, would enter it with a secret that had nothing to do with innocence and everything to do with falsehood. She worried how she would ever explain it, how she could shield this innocent life from the tangled web of adult mistakes and betrayals. She remembered the first time she saw Merrick, how his eyes lingered on hers with such intensity that it made her heart accelerate. He appeared so assured, so steadfast, and she believed him. The idea that he was capable of such deception had never occurred to her, not even as a momentary doubt. And everything, the smiles, the late-night talks, the sweet promises, felt like a perfectly crafted mirage. Alara exited the room and wandered aimlessly throughout the home, tracing her fingertips over the walls as if their touch could ground her in reality. Every familiar object, the couch where they had spent calm mornings, the kitchen where he had meticulously prepared her coffee, and the modest crib lying in the corner, seemed alien. She felt as if she was living someone else's life, one written for her but never genuinely her own. Her phone vibrated on the tabletop. Merrick sent a message. She could almost hear his voice as she read. "I can explain. Please do not panic." Panic? How could she not? The guy she had loved and trusted with her heart and body had lied to her in the most deep way. He now wanted an explanation. She did not respond. She could not. She wasn't sure she could talk without her voice breaking and years of trust crumbling into bits of sorrow. Instead, she strolled outside, feeling the chilly morning air on her face, each gust a reminder that the world went on despite her sadness. Birds chirped indifferently, the sun climbed slowly into the sky, and life continued on while her existence, which she had assumed was solid and secure, unraveled totally. Days passed and she barely noticed them. She strolled through her apartment like a ghost, going about her daily routine of eating and sleeping while the weight of the secret devoured her. Merrick called frequently, leaving messages with remorse, promises, and pleadings. He wanted to visit her, talk to her, and repair the damage he had done, but how could anything be repaired after such a revelation? The trust had been broken, possibly irreparably. She found solace in the little things, the warmth of the sun on her skin, the calm murmur of her neighbors going about their business, and the delicate kick of the baby inside her. That small heartbeat reassured her that life, despite its brutality, continues. It reminded her that hope may persist even in the most dire circumstances. But her hope was frail, like a light flickering in the wind, and she held to it passionately. Alara knew she'd have to confront Merrick eventually. Avoidance was a temporary shield, but it couldn't keep her away from reality long. When she eventually met him in the tiny park near her flat, the quiet between them was filled with unspoken words. His face was pale, and his eyes were full of fear and shame. She could see the weight of his own shame reflected in his posture, which made her chest clench even worse. He began, but she raised her hand. "Don't," she whispered. The single word weighed more than anything else. She didn't need his justifications, explanations, or apologies. They couldn't change what had happened. He looked down, his jaw tightened. "I never meant—" "I know," she replied kindly. "I'm not even sure if it is true anymore. What matters is that it happened, and we must live with the consequences." Marek's shoulders fell, the tension leaving him in an almost sad manner. "I love you," he finally murmured, although it sounded empty even to his own ears. "I still do." Alara's eyes welled up with tears, but this time they were not angry ones. She felt a sorrow deeper than wrath, a sorrow stemming from the realization that love might exist in isolation, even when it was true and genuine. Love did not always heal what was damaged, and it did not erase treachery. It just existed quietly beside the anguish. The days that followed were a whirl of appointments, preparations, and quiet thought. She approached the world with renewed caution, afraid of trust but desperate to safeguard the small life growing inside her. Each kick of the baby reminded her of her responsibility, of the fragile new world she was entrusted to care for. In her solitude, Alara started writing. She poured her heart out on pages, writing letters she would never mail, confessing her fears, sorrows, and fleeting moments of optimism. Writing became her sanctuary, a place where the truth of her pain could be spoken without judgment or expectation. The remarks were raw and unpolished, but they were hers, demonstrating her resilience. Sometimes, late at night, she'd hear the wind brushing against the glass and assume it was a voice whispering comfort. She whispered back, her words mingling with the room's shadows, making vows to herself and the kid she had yet to meet. She would love fiercely, protect steadfastly, and persevere even when the world looked unimaginably harsh. Despite her resolution, a subtle anguish lingered. It was the pain of loss, not only of Merrick nor of the life she had imagined, but also of the illusion of certainty. Life, she knew, was unexpected, delicate, and frequently unjust. It required courage, endurance, and the ability to face heartbreak while maintaining optimism. Months later, when her child's first cries filled the hospital room, Ilara held the tiny, fragile life in her arms. Every concern, betrayal, and tear culminated in this one moment of raw, uninhibited love. The baby's large, questioning eyes peered up at her, and she felt a warmth that no deception could take away. This infant, pure and perfect, represented a new beginning emerging from the wreckage of the past. She whispered promises she meant to keep: love, protection, honesty, and everlasting care. The past remained a shadow in her mind, but it no longer ruled her life. In the quiet moments, she allowed herself to hope, dream, and imagine a life rebuilt from bits of grief and fortitude. Ilara knew the journey ahead would not be simple. There would be questions she couldn't answer, scars that would never entirely heal, and times when grief threatened to overwhelm her. But she also knew she possessed a strength she had never completely realized until now. She had been betrayed, suffered heartache, and yet decided to move forward. And as she rocked her infant to sleep, feeling the little heartbeat mirror her own, she realized something profound. Life can be terrible but also beautiful. Love may be contaminated, but it may also endure. Even in her deepest despair, there was always a glimmer of hope, faint and frail but enough to see her through the darkest nights. In that quiet hospital room, with the city humming sweetly outside, Ilara made a silent promise. She would live for herself and the kid she now carries. She would acknowledge her pain, but she would not be defined by it. Above all, she would believe, even if only a little, that life, despite its messiness, unpredictability, and painful unfairness, was still worthwhile. The past cannot be changed. Betrayal couldn't be undone. But the future, fragile and unpredictable, was hers to mold. And in that realization she discovered a sorrowful kind of calm, a quiet power that would see her through the storm and into the light of tomorrow.